Good afternoon and welcome to the 245th episode of the Georgia Farm Bureau Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA state title. We have a special week ahead of us. The 2023 Brent Key, Corky, Kell, Dave Hunter 7-on-7 starts tomorrow at Georgia Tech. We'll resume for day 2 on Wednesday, and then we'll be back a week from tomorrow, Tuesday the 20th, for the third and final day. It's going to be an incredible event. I am excited about it. I'm going to go over the schedule one more time. There were a few scheduled changes in terms of the pods, some reassignments, only I think 2, and then we'll talk about that, highlight some of the big-time players that are going to be in it, and then we'll wrap it up because we have a lot of preparation to do. Of course, in years past, the 7-on-7, the way it worked, it was at Roswell area parks, and so we're used to the format. It is going to be different just with the location, but the way it's going to work, we're going to have our pool play in the morning. It's a round robin. We've never really had 6-team pods. We do this year. We have a few of them, but basically there's 4 games in the morning. So in your 6-team pods, obviously you aren't going to play every team, but afterwards, so yeah, each day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 pods. We're going to take all the teams that finished 4-0. We're going to put them together. All the teams that were 3-1, put them together. The 4-0 team with the biggest margin of victory is going to get the number 1 overall seed for the tournament, followed by the number 2 seed. Then once we have all the 4-0 teams ranked, will go to the 3-1s, then the 2-2s, then the 1-3s, then the 0-4s. That's going to set the seeding for the tournament. So there's 31 teams the first day, so it will be seeded 1 through 31. We'll tweet all that out with the bracket. Day 2, there's 30 teams. Day 3, there are 31. Then we did move the schedule up a little bit when we were meeting last week with Tim McFarland. We took out, I think, about 15 minutes from the coaching meetings in the morning. It was going to be the Georgia Tech head coach Brent Key, then the offensive and defensive coordinators. I think we're combining that. So then that will move things up and really expedite the entire process. We'll start things at 10 o'clock on all the respective fields, and then instead of teams having to leave their field to come get lunch, the lunches are going to be delivered. That's going to save time as well. And then because of those changes and the efforts by Tim McFarland and Georgia Tech to make this faster, we're going to now start the single elimination tournament at 1:30. We're going to have the championship rounds, the quarterfinals at 4 o'clock, the semis at 4:30, and then the championship game at 5 o'clock, opposed to, I said 5:30 last week, but we have moved it up and sped it up. So I think that'll be good for all the teams. It is a long day. Obviously, if a team gets eliminated, they have no obligation to stay after that. They can leave. But for the teams that make it deep in the playoffs, I think that will be huge, just having things sped up, no waiting around. In terms of the changes I was talking about, let's see, we moved, it looks like Redan was shifted from Tuesday and replaced with Jackson County. That's right. So now 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be the Bobby Dodd pod on Tuesday, and that's, from what I see on that day, it's the only 7-team pod. That's going to be ELCA, GAC, Cedar Grove, River Ridge, Monroe area, Mundy's Mill, and Jackson County. If you don't know, the new head coach at Jackson County this year is Corey Mobbs. He used to be Lanier's head football coach. He's back in Georgia. We talked to him probably 2 months ago about their team. And now that we have them added into it, I'm going to go through their roster, and we'll have a sheet out with the top prospects from all these teams competing. So on Tuesday, who to watch for? You're going to have Jackson, Pope, Carver, Atlanta, Christian Heritage, Southwest DeKalb, and Duluth in pod number 1. I think the big thing we're going to be looking for in that, Southwest DeKalb made a lot of noise last year in Class 4A. They won the boys track and field state championship, second straight year. This year they have a ton of speed. They were a really tough matchup for everyone last year. Every coach that came on said really watch out for them heading into the future. They have been playing really well, and obviously have all those athletes. They're going to be in the same pod, though, with Carver, Atlanta. We talked to Coach Miles last Friday, and that was really interesting. They're going to have a new quarterback, new playmakers all around, but their secondary is absolutely stacked. They got Joe Stone back there, a 3-year starter. He's been picking up the most offers on that Panthers roster. And then, of course, Carver's going to be opening the year with some big-time matchups, especially the Calhoun game in the Great Atlanta Bash, and what I think will be probably the biggest game in the second week of the football season. And as Coach Miles said, the mindset for Carver this year, they have all these tough non-region games. They have the Sandy Creek, Cedar Grove, and Douglas in region play. They're automatically going to earn a playoff spot, but they just want to be playing their best football then. And so, I mean, he said it right. If they don't show up early and come out and ball, they have a chance to get, I think, as he said, their head smashed in. So they're going to come out with a lot of focus. They have a lot of skilled players that led their JV team last year and had a ton of success. But, I mean, they have that tough schedule. I really like them in that pod 1, and we'll be following them really closely tomorrow. In pod number 2, Woodward Academy, Carver Columbus, Centennial, North Cobb Christian, Johns Creek, and now Gaston County, Florida is new. So they have recently been added. I'm going to have to come up with a scouting report on them. Their pod before, when I last checked, was Carver, Centennial, Woodland, Stockbridge, and Johns Creek. So that has changed dramatically. Now it's Woodward, Carver, Columbus, Centennial, North Cobb Christian, Johns Creek, and Gaston County. Let's just look at what they did last year. And they will be the lone Florida team making the trip up. All right, so that's the Jaguars out of Havana, Florida. It looks like their head coach is Russell Ellington. And they're coming off a 2-8 campaign in District 3. And then offensively, they had a sophomore starting quarterback last year. And then he was second in the team in rushing as well. That guy is Shantaris Thomas. And then their leading receiver is Nasir Williams. He had 700 yards last year and 5 touchdowns. So I think that's a great opportunity for the Jaguars, the lone Florida school, come up here, play against a really talented pod, Woodward, Carver, Centennial, North Cobb Christian, Johns Creek. So that's an exciting addition, and I love to see the out-of-school teams. They will be the lone out-of-state team on day 1. On Wednesday, Najee, did you see this? They added Norlin from Miami. Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna have to, I guess, update our scouting reports. So yeah, on Wednesday now we have in pod number 2, North Paulding, Kell, Collins Hill, Mays, Alpharetta, and Norlin High School from Miami. So this obviously just happened since we last met. Let's just look at them real quick. And that is quite a trip coming all the way from Miami. They were 9-3 last year in out of District 13. They were 3-1 in their region. Looks like they lost to Central Miami in the quarterfinals, 34-20. That is the Vikings. They will be representing Florida on Wednesday. Let's look at their returners. They also had a sophomore quarterback, Inio Yapor, had a tremendous season last year. 29 100 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he'll be a rising junior. He also led them in rushing last season. My goodness, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Let's look up a profile on this guy. Inio Yapor. And he already has 7 offers. He's been offered by Akron, Colorado, Edward Waters, Florida Atlantic, and Houston. Class of 2025. Looks like goodness. All right, so he transferred to Miami Norland last year, but as a freshman, he was the Florida Dairy Farmers Class 2A Player of the Year, Max Preps Freshman All-American, second team selection as an athlete. He completed 230 of 335 pass attempts, 69%, for 3,300 yards and 26 touchdowns with just 4 interceptions, rushed for 11 touchdowns, 530 yards. More impressively, he led Highlight Catholic to a 10-3 record and an appearance in the Florida Class 2A state title game. He also got varsity snaps as an 8th grader and threw 4 touchdowns in a game against community school out of Naples. So looks like we have a big-time quarterback prospect, Inio Yapor. That's Ennio and then Yapoor. And he's going to be repping the Vikings on day 2. But let's go to the pod number 3 real quick. That's going to be the Rose Bowl on the baseball field, Marietta, Cartersville, Calvary Day, Archer, Meadow Creek, and Douglas County. That is a really stacked lineup right there. And then looking at one sec, I had this up. So with that one, I mean, I'm interested in Calvary Day. They've got Jake Merklinger, Tennessee committed quarterback, got a big tight end prospect, and then Sire Hardaway for Douglas County, a player that has a great opportunity this year to really start picking up some offers. And I think if he, because of the tough schedule they're going to be playing, I think if he comes out and gets off to a start like he did last year with the system they run and how good Douglas County is at passing the ball, he could be near the top of the state, and he could start picking up major steam. He is an impressive athlete. He's been in 7-on-7s all offseason so far. I think the sky's the limit for him, and he'll be in there with that group. But then in the indoor facility, this is what I'm trying to look up real quick. You're going to have Cherokee Bluff, Blessed Trinity, North Atlanta, North Cobb, Denmark, and New Manchester. With Blessed Trinity, the player to be watching for is Brooks Goodman. He is their junior quarterback, 6'2", 200 pounds. Blessed Trinity obviously has a new head coach with Ed Dudley, new coordinators, new staff. They did retain some of their staff from these past few seasons. The continuity's there. A lot of these coaches have worked together, but the coaching staff and the players haven't really had too much time together. They had a short spring. They've been having workouts. They competed in the Robbie Roper 7-on-7 over the weekend, and have really just been trying to install the new offense, get that familiarity, and I think that's going to benefit them that they had the 7-on-7 experience this last week, and now they're going into this one with just that competition under their belts. They played great teams like Gainesville and had a really tough outing, losing, I think, on like a last-second overtime game. But I think they'll have a chance, and that's a player to watch right there. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, and I've heard a lot of good things from him. All right, so then the final pod on tomorrow's lineup is going to be ELCA, GAC, Cedar Grove, River Ridge, Monroe area, and Mundy's Mill. So there you have it right there. That's the 31 teams. Starts at 10 o'clock. Tournament starts at 1:30, and you can go to Score ATL's Twitter. We'll have the scores reported there, and we'll send you to the right direction, and then you'll be able to see who's playing who in the tournament. All right, so let's go over real quick. Hold up. Going to go over these prospects real quick for day 2. All right, and this was Najee did a phenomenal job of breaking this down. I'm just going to go over some of it. All right, so on Wednesday, 30 total teams competing. In pod number 1, it's going to be Cass, Savannah Christian, Cherokee, Lanier, Walton, and Columbia out of DeKalb County. So Cass, Sokovie White, committed to Georgia, top 75 player. He is really an athlete that can do it on both sides of the ball, and also their top return man. He had 7 receiving touchdowns last year. On defense, he had an interception and a pick 6. He was the offensive MVP in the National Combine in January. They also have Devin Henderson. He's been huge in Cass's ascendance these past few seasons. Then on the offensive line, we won't get to see him because it's a 7-on-7, but Bear McWhorter, one of the top O-line prospects in the country. And then we also have Brody McWhorter, his brother, getting ready to have a big sophomore season, and he will be at the quarterback position. He's been racking up the offers: Florida State, South Florida, UAB, and Vanderbilt. Watch out for Cass. Savannah Christian, they have a ton of talent as well. I think they have the number 1 athlete in the class of 2025. They also have Zoe Smalls, David Busey, and they had a tremendous season last year. All right, in terms of Kell, Bryce Clavin, that's the guy to watch, the quarterback. He's got a huge arm, had a great spring, has tons of weapons to throw to, and then we'll obviously want to see what Kell's secondary looks like. They did a really decent job last year. I thought they tackled well, played outstanding, but obviously that's going to be the difference in 5A. You got to have just those lockdown corners that don't give up the big plays. I think defensively, I like what Kell's going to be able to do. They are going to be losing some of their top pass rushers and starters on the defensive line. We won't get to see them. But in terms of their secondary, I really like what Kell is bringing back. All right, we got Collins Hill. It's a little out of order. Bear with me, guys. All right, with Collins Hill, Deuce Gerald's the second. He played as a true freshman. He's coming back to make an impact. He's already picked up major Power 5 offers. We got CJ Hector. He's going to be a key piece on their offense. We got running back Jakari Thomas. And then also in that pod is going to be Mays. Wide receiver Clayton Kopic, versatile receiver that led that explosive Mays offense last year. And then you got Cherokee, a team that I think has had a couple kind of average seasons, but they're looking to break in and have a playoff run this year. They got Chase Montgomery, returning at linebacker, one of the team's best tacklers, and then Caden Jameson at receiver, and then two-way player J.C. Jones plays receiver and cornerback and was second on the team in receiving yards and touchdowns. Watch out for him. All right, let's go to pod 3. That's Lovejoy Troop, Kennesaw Mountain, North Gwinnett, Parkview, and Bluffton, South Carolina. Starting with Lovejoy. All right, at running back, Draylon Gilbert. He had a big sophomore season with 769 yards and 8 touchdowns, averaged 9 yards per carry last season. So explosive player out of the backfield. I'd like to see how his hands look and what he's going to bring to that Wildcats offense. And then Antonio Floyd at receiver. He had 5 touchdowns last season, 511 yards with a 19 yards per catch average. So he's a big play guy that can catch it and make big plays after catch. You got Kennesaw Mountain, North Gwinnett, Parkview, and Bluffton. Parkview, obviously the new head coach. That's going to be an interesting storyline, and they actually opened the season with Kell, but I don't think they're going to face in pod play. Yeah, they were in the same. Gosh, this thing has changed so much. They were in the same pod last week, not anymore, but they could potentially match later on Wednesday. In terms of Bluffton, South Carolina, that's Coach Gregory. They were outstanding last season. They have a chance to contend for the state title out of South Carolina. And then in the indoor pod, we got Walton, West Forsyth, South Gwinnett, Grayson, Lambert, and Hillgrove. With Walton, I just want to see how Jeremy Hecklinski comes out. He had a breakout season last year. He was the talk of the town after that big performance against Mill Creek, and then some of the other big outings. I thought he was phenomenal in that North Paulding game. Had some big-time performances and was up at the top of the state in terms of passing with Aaron Nolan, Juju Lewis. But it's kind of strange. He committed to Wake Forest, and then people haven't really been talking about him too much this offseason. But I think he's going to prove it right out the gates why he was on everyone's radar last year. And then, of course, you got Makari Bodiford out of the backfield, one of the more underrated running backs in Class 7A, had a phenomenal year. Even in that Buford game, was able to go head-to-head with Justice Haynes. Obviously, Justice Haynes had an incredible game in that, but still, Makari played really well and gave them that much-needed rushing attack. And then Hunter Teal. How is he going to be this season? Last year, he was so key in moving the ball for Walton down the field. And he's a 3-star now. So if you look at Hunter Teal last year, as I said, he's so huge. Just when Walton would have a tough third down at midfield, he would come up with these huge plays, always get to the sticks. This year, it's about him becoming that red zone threat. He only had 2 touchdowns last year. You could potentially see him be a 10-touchdown guy. And with some of the other weapons, and then them being able to run the ball successfully with Makari Bodiford and a great returning offensive line, I think Hunter's going to be able to kind of sneak out, get open, and then Jeremy obviously has that quick release and vision. So I expect him to be a huge impact this year, but watch out for him in the red zone. And then, of course, in these 7-on-7s, you aren't kicking the PATs, you're throwing them. So we will definitely get to see kind of what his goal line routes look like. Can he be a mismatch? We know what he can do in the open field, but it's about him being that big threat. All right, so then West Forsyth. They had an incredible year, honestly. I mean, they had Peyton Straco earn a scholarship to Clemson. They ran the ball really well. They're a tough team. They took the lacrosse state title over Lambert. They have a bunch of just skilled multi-sport athletes. And then looks like we'll see what they have returned. And we know they can run the ball really well. But we'll look at their secondary and just see what else they can do. Then South Gwinnett had a tremendous start to last season, and then once they got in region, I know it was a disappointing finish for them. They had a tough stretch, but looks like they also were dealing with some injuries. I think this year they're coming back, a lot of experience on both sides of the ball, and I think their passing attack is going to be much improved. Lambert, Tommy Lafayette is the player to watch. He's going to be their lead back this year, but I know he's going to be making plays as well. Out of the backfield, catching the ball. He had highlight reel plays at the Georgia Elite Classic and is very physical, as Najee points out here. He's squatting 425. We saw him put on the truck stick at Georgia Elite and really have a great year. Then Hillgrove. What are they going to be able to do this upcoming season in that really intriguing region with McEachern, Marietta, Harrison, and Pebblebrook? I think that's it. Last year, Harrison snuck up on everyone and earned that playoff spot after a slow start, but then Hillgrove was also able to get some big wins. I think they beat McEachern, and they're going to have Jonathan Owusu. He is a rising junior. He led Hillgrove in receiving yards last year. His breakout game came against Carrollton when he had 6 catches for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then on the defensive side, Braylon Hansborough, first team all-region last year as a junior. He will be a senior leader on that defensive side of the ball. Finally, Warner Robins, Mill Creek, Creekside, McEachern, Norcross, and Peachtree Ridge in the final pod on Wednesday. Creekside, they've got an incredible schedule ahead of them. They're playing Mater Day out of California, some other big-time matchups. They'll be in the Corky Kell to start things off, and they came really close last year. I think made a run to the quarters in Class 5A. Mill Creek, what are they going to look like with Shane Throgmartin? A lot of new pieces on offense, but still they are so good at reading the defense, taking advantage of their versatility, and we usually see a lot of their skill guys playing both sides of the ball, so we know they'll be sound on the defensive side as well as offensively. Then the third and final day, looking to see if there are any major changes. Well, Redan moved over to the Friday schedule. They're going to be in there with Roswell, LaGrange, Tucker, Sandy Creek, Camden, South Carolina, and Stockbridge. Personally, I think Stockbridge will be an intriguing team to look at. They were great at running the ball last year, but also gave 4A a pretty strong run, and I think they are a top 10 team for sure. You also have Cook County, Tift County, Winderbarrow, Salem, South Paulding, and Miller Grove. You got Best Academy, Heard County, Lakeside, Landmark Christian, Dunwoody, and Dutchtown in the Rose Bowl pod. Then on the rec fields, Lassiter, Bethlehem Christian, Midtown, Charles Drew, Therrell, and Flint River Academy. And then finally, Hapeville Charter, East Jackson, Campbell, Calvary Day, North Murray, and Chapel Hill. So that should be really exciting starting tomorrow. We'll get a good sense of how things go with the broadcasting and coverage. There were some major commitments made over the last couple of days. Let's go through them real quick. Out of Georgia, we have Elijah Lee, cornerback out of North Cobb, that we'll obviously see on tomorrow in that pod with Cherokee Bluff, BT, North Atlanta, Denmark, and New Manchester. He committed to Coastal Carolina earlier this morning. He is a 6 foot, 170-pound corner, listed as the number 115 player in the state. Also over the weekend, we had Colquitt County's edge rusher Tyshawn Reed committed to Duke. And then there was Antoine Smith from Westlake committed to Kentucky yesterday. 6'3", 188-pound linebacker. 6'3", 188. That's quite a frame. And also Duke picked up Carrollton's Montrez Smith. 5'11", 200-pound linebacker, number 103rd ranked player in this state. And then yesterday we saw Duke Watson out of Mary Persons, which I think they're in this too, or they were. I guess not. I had them in there last week. But anyway, Duke Watson, he committed to Louisville yesterday. And then Creekside's, Caleb Holmes, he is a offensive lineman. He committed to Pitt. So, man, it was a busy weekend with these visits and guys committing on the spot. Looks like that's all I have from the weekend. All right. Yeah, and that BT quarterback that I was talking about, Brooks Goodman, he's a 4.0 student. Looks like he's taking the reins, but yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him. Last year he had 3 touchdowns, 148 passing yards in the win over Johns Creek on just 8 completions. So BT last year, obviously different coaching staff, but they were a run-first football team. Even though Justice Haynes had transferred out, that was their bread and butter. But I think they're going to be more balanced this year. They'll be able to run the ball when they need to and have a different look. And they have the quarterback to provide that balance. Obviously, they're going to want to close the gap against Roswell, who had a really strong win over them last year. But I expect that to be a little closer this time around. And then let's see what else happened. I guess I'll just go over one more time in case you missed it. The second Georgia High School Football Hall of Fame class was announced. I think the highlight of the announcements was DJ Shockley finding out when he was live on air. His family came out there to surprise him, and he was definitely shocked. He thought he was just covering who was getting in, and then he saw his name up there. And that was a really special moment. I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't seen it. Just go to DJ's Twitter. But once again, that game is going to be on October 21st. The ceremony on October 21st. Games on October 22nd. All that information is at scoreatl.com, and you can check it out there. As for the rest of the week, Sammy Brown. Okay, that's huge. So Mike Matthews.
He was in Georgia this weekend.
That's right.
And he tweeted out him in Clemson colors while at Georgia.
All right, so you see right there, that's Parkview's Mike Matthews. That's a Tiger logo, not a Panther logo. It's not the Parkview Panthers, so he could be leaning towards Clemson. And Mike Matthews is so electric. I mean, when he was starting as a sophomore, he's going to be a senior this upcoming season. He was already known as the #1 receiver in that class. Came out, handled the big moment right away, had a great game in the Corky Kell. Has been balling out ever since. He plays basketball. He is probably, I mean, I would consider him the most explosive receiver in the state at this point. He's a big play guy, just has that special ability. And if he goes to Clemson, they've already had such an incredible last 7 days. That would just be massive. I don't care what the ratings say. I think that would put them top 2, top 3. Yeah. And Najee said they might get another 5-star. But yeah, I mean, that's just one of the many great players that are going to be there this week. We'll have these team breakdowns up at scoreetl.com, but we're going to dip out early today so we can get all that up and get ready for tomorrow. We'll be up there with the coverage starting at 9 a.m. Be sure to follow it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you then.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are a Farm Bureau.